Hello everyone, welcome to the very first C# class, and well, today we're going to be learning C#. For any of my existing subscribers, this will not affect the usual upload schedule. This is just something that my local library asked me to do, and I'm going to be making I think it's an 8-video series I'm making about coding C#. For the rest of you, well, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is not a shameless plug, but just subscribe because you'll be able to see when the videos come out, and then plus, once you're subscribers, I can see your comments, and I'll get notifications when you comment, so I can quickly respond to any questions that you have. Also, these videos will be moving to a live series, but right now I'm just busy and I don't have time to stream on Tuesdays, but they will be eventually become live once my schedule frees up just a bit. Alright, so let's get started. So I kind of just put together a very small, quick presentation and just about kind of C#. So, for example, or just for the first question, what is coding? And coding is the process of assigning code to something for the purpose of clarification or identification. Now, in simpler terms, that's just basically telling a computer to do something, You're putting an input to the computer and it will output. Now, I kind of thought maybe it could be cool if I can have like a question and then kind of post it. And I kind of just came up with one first. What came first, the code or the IDE? Now, let me give you just a little bit of background. The IDE is what you type the code into, which tells the computer to do something. So, and then you have your code, which you use. So, an IDE couldn't have come before the code because you have to code the IDE. Well, that's the answer. The code came first. And about 70 years ago, coding was just about switches. Then people would program these switches to do something. And then I don't know if for any of you who have seen Hidden Figures, the movie, they had these punch cards with holes in them, and then they would put it into like a reader, and that reader would read the punch cards, and that would kind of be the code. And I think on one of the space shuttles, they actually were using punch cards to control the autopilot, which I thought was a pretty cool fact. Okay. So that's just kind of the basics. Let's figure out how we can start actually coding for ourselves. So first we have to install the IDE, which we'll be typing the code into like I mentioned before. And the IDE we're going to be using is Microsoft Visual Studio. There we go. And that's going to pull up here. I mistyped Microsoft. And it's going to be the first link. Now, I believe this might work on Mac OS, and I believe it works on Linux, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But this is completely safe. You can download it even in the Microsoft Store if you have it on your computer. And then you're gonna you could just pull Visual Studio. Okay, so they do have it for Mac. Okay, it's right here. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna pull Visual Studio off, and you're gonna just get the community version. You don't need the professional, you don't need enterprise. The community version works just fine. That's what I've been using. So that's going to take you up to a setup wizard, which you have here. I already have it installed, so I don't need to download it again. But once you finish the setup wizard, it's going to take you to something that looks a bit like this. Let's let that load up. Okay, so now we're in the IDE kind of home screen page. And this is kind of where all your coding projects will come in here. So for example, I have some coding projects and different names back in the very beginning when I was just kind of learning code and stuff like that. But once you're in here, we're going to want to click Create New Project. And then we're going to want to go to the console app. And the reason why we're doing the console app is because that will output our code in the console or in like the CMD shell. We can get into things like the apps and stuff like that. For example, the Windows Form app if we want to create actual apps, but that coding will require but the console app is a prerequisite to that. So we need to learn this first before we can go over into the Windows Form applications. So we're going to click that. And also, while that's loading in, why C#? Well, C# is good if you're interested in doing game development, and it can be used for data sciences, but you would technically go into more for Python for that. But if you're especially looking for like Windows game development and stuff like that, and using Unity for game development, definitely C# is the best way to go. But you can do data sciences in C# too. It's not really a big deal. Okay, we'll just call it first coding class. And we're going to open it. I'm going to click Create. And we'll let that load in to our kind of IDE. And also, really quickly, C# runs pretty good. I mean, if you even have 2 gigs of RAM, C# will still run pretty smoothly. It might glitch out a little bit if you're doing bigger projects, but otherwise it should be okay. Alright, so here is the very kind of the basic command shell for Visual Studio. And this comes standard with any new project. You're going to see stuff like static void, using system. You might have using system. I have these other things enabled here for different projects that I had to do. But that's completely okay if you just have using system right now. It's not a big deal. Alright, so how do we, what's the kind of basic syntax, this hello world syntax for C#? Well, first you're going to have to know that every time you type something out in C#, you're going to have to put these little braces or brackets, whatever you want to call them, in. So this will always kind of be there. Oops, I didn't mean to add the extra one. So every time you add like a new segment, those braces or brackets will be there. So now every time you type a line of code, there's going to have some sort of semicolon in there. And those semicolons are going to kind of denote that it's the ending of your statement. Alright, so let's code the hello world. To do hello world, we're going to need something called console.writeLine. Now, what does console.writeLine mean? Well, console.writeLine is saying that it's going to write to the console, which we are displaying. And then we're going to open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. So that's kind of the command for writing something to the console. Now, we have to figure out how do we write, input something to the console. And that's just going to be denoted with 2 quotation marks to show that we are now outputting text. And that text could be hello world. Oops. Exclamation point. And just to prove to you that it works, I'm going to click start and let that run. And you might see, oh, and I actually just made a mistake. And I'll show you what that mistake was. So let's let that run. And every time you make a new console project, you need to put console.readKey. Now, console.readKey just tells that to the shell that we need to it needs to keep the console open so it can display what we're seeing. It will be pretty much a requirement in any project you do. Let me just kind of fix that over. There we are. Okay, so now let me hit start. And it will display hello world. And then we can just close out of that. So now what's next? What else can we learn in the very basics? Well, we're going to also have some functions like console.readLine. And let me type that out. Well, actually, no, that's for a bit later project. Let me just kind of go over some more of the basics of the actual C# program itself. So whenever you're coding in C#, you're going to have a thing called your error list. And this error list will display the errors and warnings that you have. Now, there's a pretty big difference between an error and a warning. An error is like an actual error in your code, and you can't run the code if there's an error. However, if you have a warning, it might be more of a suggestion saying unused local variable. And I can actually show you what I mean by that. If I initialize a string, which we'll get to in the next video, I'll call it just string A, and I'll put the semicolon. We're going to get an error saying the variable A is declared but never used. That's just a warning, I meant to say, sorry. And if I click start, it will still run the program. However, if we have a warning, like I have a missing semicolon there, we cannot run the program. It will say there were build errors, and then that won't let us run the program. So that's, I think, a pretty big thing to know for any novices who are starting to learn C#. And another great thing for, which is why I chose C# in the Visual Studio IDE, is that when you are coding, it usually can fill in some things, and it also gives you suggestions. So whenever there's an error, it might come up with a suggestion here with a light bulb, and it will say fix formatting, and will give you some ways to fix it. And also when you're coding in C#, it comes up with fill-ins. So if I'm doing console.writeLine, it will kind of give me the fill-ins, make it a bit easier, so it's less tedious than having to go through and having to type the whole thing out. Alright, so I think that's pretty much sums everything up that I wanted to touch on for today's lesson. If you have any questions, or I think I glossed over something, please comment down below, because your comments will make these videos better. I know this wasn't the best video, but they will get better over time, and I'm really excited because my final goal is for me to have you build your own project. So I'll just show you an example of a project that I made. If I open a project or solution, this was like a find and replace application that I made. And I'll just show you really quickly wherever it is. It's over. Let me just search it. Or you know what? I'll just use this one. This is a calculator I made for. Oops, it disappear. Come on. This thing right here. And yeah, don't save. It's fine. Okay, so there we are. So my kind of overall goal is for you to be able to read something like this in C#. And if you can do that, that'll be awesome. And this might look really intimidating right now. You're probably like, oh my gosh, what are these so many different colors? And, you know, what do all these like int x and while and SL equal? Those, you'll be able to kind of just read right through this and have a pretty good understanding of what this program does without me even running it by the end of this course. So I hope that gives you some incentive to kind of keep working harder. And like I mentioned, please comment down below for any questions. It will just make these videos better. So with that, please enjoy your week until I see you again. I'll be uploading weekly every Tuesday for Tech Tuesday. And I think that's pretty much it. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.